the customer empathy at the beginning of the innovation framework. That's where your richest source of qualitative data is going to come from, and so you really need to own that. Partner down the line. Engage subject matter experts along the way. The knowledge that they're going to bring in and stretch your thinking is really going to stretch the art of the possible when it comes to your idea. And then recalibrate your team as you progress. Yes, the idea owner needs to be recognized throughout the journey and have that source of empowerment, but if they're not necessarily the right person to take it beyond to the next step, there needs to be that maturity and some of those hard discussions. The next thing we want to do is focus on this early stage of problem discovery, where we go out and understand what is our core value proposition and who is our customer, but not, in a broad sense. We don't want to say, well, there's 20 million customers within Jakarta that we can go out and target. Who are the early adopters that are going to teach us the most about something in the least amount of time? And these are your extreme users. These are the rebels, these are the hackers, these are the people that wait in that long line for the brand new iPhone when it gets released. They're going to give you such a rich source of learning, and you need to go and design around them, because if you can solve for them, there's a great chance that you're going to solve for a much wider audience. And so I love that quote at the bottom there: if you design for everyone, you design for no one. Once you've gone and conducted your customer empathy interviews, you're going to have a great understanding of their motivations, of their behaviors, and what are some of the inherent pains in their life as they go about completing their jobs. Using customer journey maps is a great way to draw out how it currently works, and then map your learnings along that current journey to look for pains where customers could be acquired or leave, or where you could add value. My favorite example is the milkshake example. Has anyone heard of Clayton Christensen? No one. He is the founder of disruptive innovation. So his first book was The Innovator's Dilemma, and he did a case study on how the hard drive was being disrupted through less effective, more expensive technology that then became mass adopted at that Moore's Law, essentially, which is what Lynn spoke about earlier. So this is a great example. I think it was Burger King. Burger King in America were really struggling to understand why their milkshake sales weren't increasing. And so, like any typical organization, they went out and performed market research. They asked customers what do they want. And the customers told them things like, we want more chopped chips in our milkshakes, we want marshmallows, we want thicker milkshakes. All this anecdotal, surface level research which we could have easily found out by doing a Google search. And so they responded to that research, and milkshake sales stayed exactly the same. And this perplexed them. They weren't sure why this was happening. So Professor Clayton Christensen from Harvard University actually went with the team, and they started standing at the front of Burger King early in the morning and started approaching customers who were coming in to buy milkshakes. And the question they would ask is, around why. Why today, at this time of the morning, are you choosing to come to Burger King and buy a milkshake? And the answers were fascinating. And so the type of information they got back is, well, yesterday firstly, the market that they defined were commuters. So these were people who were coming to Burger King early in the morning and then doing long drives, 2 to 3 hours to work. And this was fascinating. So the driver said, well, yesterday I had a donut, but it was very greasy and it made the steering wheel very oily, so I don't want to do that again. The other person said, well, yesterday I had a banana, but I was hungry 30 minutes later, and so it didn't satisfy my need. The other person said, I had a chocolate bar, but I felt so guilty that I'll never do that again. And so the reason that they were coming in to buy a milkshake was because that it was easy to use, it sat in the cup holder, it took a long time to finish through a very thin straw because it was viscose, and it sat right in their belly, and it lasted all the way until they got to their end of the drive. And so instead of changing anything about the product, they gave self-serving cups, they put a milkshake dispenser right at the entrance so that people could grab them, and sales increased 20% in the first 3 months. fascinating research if we move past just anecdotal market research. So then moving along, we now understand the problem. How do we go and ideate, and how do we go and test for it? This is where the fun part sets in. So we need to understand the problem. I've spoken about making sure that the problem is scalable, making sure that it's available for not just one person, but for a much bigger audience. It needs to occur in a customer's journey that is pivotal to either acquiring them or retaining them. And I think that is sometimes overlooked, is we wonder why churn is such a difficult metric to manage in any businesses, especially in telecommunications. Why do customers leave us at these certain points? And when we're designing a product, we should keep that in mind. And so use the canvas. I spoke about this earlier. This is a fantastic tool to go and map out all your unknown assumptions as a business model rather than just an idea. What is my value proposition? What are my inherent costs? What is the problem? What are the key metrics? And this is not a once-off template. So this is something that you saw in that video. It's something that you're going to iterate on. I encourage you to blow it up on the wall, get your post-it notes out, and rip them down as you go and validate and find out that something is no longer true. So it's a great tool to use as you're mapping your ideas into a business model. This is Suncorp, another large Australian insurer and bank, and helping them go through this process.
During this process, we had to work out what were the right problems to solve for customers, and we went through a number of interviews, and what was, I think, most interesting around those was to not narrow ourselves into financial services, but to actually keep it really broad about the actual customer segment. And that identified a heap of things which were really interesting, which again, when we got to solution, were not about necessarily financial services, which I think was really interesting and actually quite motivating to work on.
So we get then to the ideate solution, that's the fun bit, because nothing is ever right. Come up with so many different ideas, so many weird and wonderful concepts, and it's all about, from this problem, what do we reckon we can do to solve it, even a bit of it, let alone all of it. And again, nothing is wrong. You come up with different prompts, different ideas from everywhere, you bounce ideas off one another, you chuck ideas together, you spin them. The great thing is there's no accountability, it's all just, what do you reckon might work? Let's give it a go. There's nothing.
Okay, once you've come up with lots of ideas, it's then about saying what's feasible, what's viable, and how do we work through those. I think that's where it's a really interesting combination of the original research we did, our desk research that says what problem we're solving and can we quantify a really good outcome out of it to actually say it would work for our business. And then you go through that iteratively, and what we found is we found so much information on our topic, you have to really spend a lot of time paring it back and refining it without sort of exploding your opportunity even further. It was a great process to actually funnel in and say what was really important to our customers that we'd been talking to and what was going to make sense for our business and what our capability was already inside our business that we could leverage.
So what is great is once we had spoken to customers about what the solutions might work for them and how they might resonate, is actually putting those solutions through to what I would call where the rubber meets the road. In other words, can we present our solution to the stakeholders that are responsible for this process and actually convince them that the process we've gone through, the solution that we've come up with, and our proposition to take it forward actually works for them. And that has come together in pitch.
Our customer receives increasing value.
And that's sort of the process in its entirety and how we helped Suncorp come up with a great new way of extending their customers' lifetime value. And so now the real part, the execution part. What I've seen around the room already are some great concepts with some good early validation. How do we now scale these as proper sustainable businesses? And that's some of the things we need to think about as we move from this paper prototype world into getting our product out there that the customers are starting to engage with, but also starting to pay for. And I think you'll get a true sense of the customer's commitment when they have to part some hard-earned money on the product. And so if you're thinking about a minimum viable product, and I'm glad it was spoken about earlier, because I agree it's something that has got a different definition no matter who you speak to. But at its core and at its principle, it needs to stand for a few things. It needs to be, how do we create them so that we gain the most valuable insights? Those valuable insights need to give us direction in which way we move. It should give us external proof of our business model. It should help us understand our acquisition funnel and should be used so that we can pitch it back into the organization to get that ongoing commitment and momentum. And so if we think of it as a journey, how do you go and prototype and test? Well, early on, a great way of doing it is going and doing your conversations, your customer interviews. You can do paper prototyping, wireframes. This is great, it's very rich. There's lots of learnings that you can pull out, but it still lacks the commitment and the quantitative data that you need in order to go to market. And so if you're looking for more validation or higher amounts of customers, a great way to go about doing it is go and create a Facebook page or go and create a blog about the problem that you're looking to solve. Or go and do some surveys. But ultimately where you want to end up is in this top right quadrant, which is your product 1.0. This should feel like the final product in the customer's hands. They should use it seamlessly. It should be a great experience. But in the background, you don't have to be all the way there. You can still run spreadsheets in the background and hack a lot of the systems in the back end. But on the front end, it needs to look like a good product and have a great customer experience. I find that we sometimes go too early to market with a customer that doesn't quite meet the needs. And if you're in a big company, that can lead to reputational damage. So rather use this as a framework to go out and test it along the way without worrying about that big reputational risk. And so the next video that I'm going to bring up is from the CEO of a company called Stitch. Now Stitch is one of the world's most successful, I wouldn't call it a dating platform, it's a companionship platform for elderly people who have lost their partners in life or are looking for a new meaning. And he was about to close down his business. In fact, they were trying to build a dating app and were going down a complete wrong problem. And he opened up a blog. He wrote a blog about everything he had learned in the last 2 years. And he put it out there to the big communities that they built. And overnight, he had this overwhelming response. And he realized, he had an epiphany, that he was solving for the wrong thing. And companionship was what needed to be solved. And so Andrew talks about the importance of testing your idea early on. And I find that a lot of startups delay the reality of the truth by holding on to their dream internally for too long. You've got to get your dream out there. You need to let it be experienced by people out there so that you can either move in a new direction or build on that momentum. And so this is Andrew talking about how to test MVPs.
MVP process. First thing I'll say is kind of what I said earlier about it's not about MVP, it's not about the product, it's about testing out there and getting something out that you can actually modify. So there's a term that people like, it's called the audacity of zero. So, and then you see this with every startup and a lot of people working on projects that until your concept has collided with reality, you can have great dreams for that baby. You can think this is a $1 billion business and that's actually a really rewarding feeling. And so what a lot of startups end up doing is delaying as long as possible that moment that they collide with reality. It's like making the logo perfect and having lots of coffees with other entrepreneurs and feeling really cool. And it's like, that's fun, but just be aware that's not getting you any closer to the dream. And I think they do it because it prolongs the dream and they're scared to find out the dream's not real. And look, it's really scary, but you will do yourself a massive favour. If that dream is not real, you should find out straight away because you then still have enough runway to find another dream, like to figure out what does work. You've got to get out and figure out what does work. And I've had plenty of conversations with startups that waited too long, and by the time I had this conversation with them, actually got them to go and test and really look at the numbers, within a few weeks they decided to stop the business. But because they waited so long on that Audacity 0 time, they were just out of puff and they had to go back and do something else. So really bringing that in as soon as possible.
And so, as I finish off, I just want to share a recent project that I was fortunate enough to not only invest in, but work on recently in South Africa. And it was so interesting because we started off with a solution in mind, and the framework took us down a completely unexpected journey that was just remarkable. And so, it all started off with a problem. South Africa, much like many emerging markets, I'm sure no indifferent to some of the problems you face in Indonesia, have a real struggle moving people up the financial economic ladder. And the way that the South African government have combated that over the last 20 years is through government housing. So they had issued millions of government houses, but were unable to manage the administration of issuing the contract or the mortgage deed. So people were living in houses, but they didn't effectively own the houses. And what that meant is that if you're trying to move up the financial ladder, you can't go to a bank, you can't lend money, you can't build on top of your house. And so this creates a real dilemma, and it creates all these other problems around. And I'll talk a little bit about those problems that we